Okay. The journey of lifetimes into now. Hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode titled When Angels of the Future Fight Demons of the Past. Two questions arose to me. Questions I find that they are worthy for the whole species to wonder about. One was, where is sadness located? And I'll tell the listeners how I got to that sentence. The second question is, are desires deserved? And even though I've written When Angels of the Future Fight Demons of the Past, I wrote fought too, but I thought fight is in the present tense. So we have a kind of blend of past, present, future in the sentence. You know, earlier today, I felt an unreasonable sadness. I will openly speak about it. When I say unreasonable, that means I could not find why I was sad. Can you imagine? A sort of sadness without reason. And as I basked in that sadness, my mind went into this sort of, think of it this way, it wasn't a sort of inner dialogue. I think I have surpassed speech in my inner realms. For me, it was more like what was looking and what was being looked at. Not that there was a disharmony, but it's as if I felt an unconditional sadness. You know, in these episodes of mine, I have spoken about unconditional love. But I would say I experienced a sort of unconditional sadness. And then I thought about, you know what it is? It's kind of like, even though I say an unreasonable sadness, eventually it finds reason. It's like an emotion enters the person, and then what the person looks at is kind of like painted by that emotion. Eventually, what started as an unreasonable sadness, it went to a sort of self-consciousness. And I thought about, what do I deserve as a being? And then I thought about, if regardless of like the appearance of desire for the entity, I don't know how to say this, but it's as if when I think about the future, the concept of deservance and desire relates. When I think about the past, there's a sort of sadness. You know, a lot of people honor their past, they celebrate their past, but to me, I feel like I don't want to say history is sad, it's like somebody, becomes a historian and they're like, why are you sad? And the historian's like, you don't know what's happened, bro. Oh man. But anyways, I'm just trying to say I had an experience where I felt sad. And when I say I felt sad, it was more like there was sadness being in the moment. And so the question arose at some point. I was like, okay, where is the sadness? And the moment I thought about where is the experience of sadness located, the sadness became like, how can I tell you? It's as if the sadness, I don't want to say it went away, but it had no longer. It's as if like an emotion disappeared in the mystery of the analysis of what is going on. You know. You know, guys, I just checked the video analytics, and this video got 1 like, and I've been talking about being sad, so I don't know why people are liking it. It's like, who knew, you know, some guy comes and talks about his joy. It's like, is that 0 viewers I see? Somebody comes and talks about his sadness. It's like, is that 2 million views I see? Oh, man. But the interesting thing is, just like they say, you know, just a second. Anyways, jokes aside, to continue. Pretty much this episode, 3 points I would like to speak about. One is the title, and then where is sadness located, and then are desires deserved. They all have a sort of contextual common denominator, which I would share. I would say, because I've shared that I was sad today, you know, I have announced globally in cyberspace that I have been sad today. It's as if I wondered, where is sadness? And a part of me really wanted to know the answer to that question. Where is sadness located? You know, I thought about it, is the sadness in my outer realms? And I realized there's nothing in the outer realms a person can be sad about when it's just the periodic table. You know, it's as if like when it comes to just existence, shape and color, you know, it's as if it's like nobody can be upset about geometry changing on some level. So to me it felt like, okay, this sadness is not in the outer realms. You know, maybe it may be a sadness for the outer realms, but the emotion, it's as if there's a brain, there's a conscious, you know, there's a person viewing, like first person point of view, a world, and they get sad about that world, but it's like the sadness is actually not in the world, it is in the inner world, right? Now, anyways, so I concluded that I am not sad about something in my outer realms, you know. Then I thought about my inner realms, and I'm like, what kind of sadness is hiding in my mind that I wasn't aware of until today, you know? I thought about the inner realms, and I realized that the sadness came from how can I tell you, a consideration of an inevitable outcome. You know, a person, let's say you do something wrong, you're upset of how the past happened. Let's say you're in the present and you do something wrong, and you can, let's say, repent or make it up or something. You know, it's like then you have a sort of sadness in the present which you can fix. And then there's a sadness of the future. You know, I'll tell you, I have, you know, when my grandfather passed away when I was 10 years old in Iran, I remember I went to that funeral, and I was living in Canada. I was just visiting around, and I really didn't know my paternal grandfather that well, but he suddenly passed away. I have a twin brother. I remember we both go there. Everybody, the aunts and uncles are all crying. My whole family, everybody's crying. I remember I cried for 20 minutes and then it stopped. It's like I had ran out of memories. And so that was a sadness of never being able to see, like, an intelligence in the realm again, But I have had that I would say, like, the sadness had a sort of limit, but I would say I have had moments where I'll admit it, I'll be honest, I have fathomed my own exit and it has made me tear up. Imagine it's like, somebody was crying, they're like, why are you crying? And the person's like, we're all gonna die. But really what it is it is the absence of ability. This is really why we cry. It's the absence of possibility. That's the something. So I realized that what appeared as a sort of I'm being sad in the outer realm had a sort of basis on the inner realm. And in my inner realms, I was fathoming a sort of inevitable outcome. Now, what I realized was that I have different senses of value in regards to the sense of identity I perceive. So what I mean by this is that if I just focus on myself, then the sadness is dependent on the future of, like, an individual self. If I think about the future of a species, imagine, crying, being sad over the fact that it's as if, like, you will die one day. Everybody we're temporary creatures. We have, we transition out of this realm. But then imagine having a sorrow and sadness of the species dying, right? Or even yet the world, the planet dying, or the galaxy dying, or the world dying. Do you see? It's as if the sadness amplifies beyond the human conceivable domain. It's as if imagine the mother of infinity, worried about, infinities. I should have used the word limitless. I'm pretty much trying to say it's like I'm trying to create an example where infinity is a child and the outcome of infinity. It's as if, care. I don't know how to say it. I'll just move on. I realized the sadness, which to the conscious personality was meaningless, was based on an inevitable outcome, based on decision making. It's as if we don't realize how much of what will happen in this world for human beings is based on what human beings decide. You decide to be a more of a mental being. It's as if it's like all the dimensions you miss out on. It's as if there's a cost to how attention moves. And when you meet the inevitable, when you fathom the inevitable, you're actually fathoming the end of meaning. I think about, how do I say it? Just the value. The value of individual life compared to collective life. the value of collective life compared to, the truth of one world. I don't know in what talk it was, but when I was giving, I think this was like maybe half a year ago, maybe not, maybe less. But in one of the talks I was talking about cyberspace, and then I suddenly envisioned that there will be children born who they will get lost in cyberspace. It would be as if a sort of a natural consciousness entranced and then entrapped by an unnatural, world. And then that made me sort of very upset, as if the ignorance of how we are living in now leads to, tragedies in the future, which is, we can lead to tragedies in the future, where it's as if like the butterfly effect works both ways. What I'm trying to say there is that whether we do something good or bad, it's as if events will be set into motion regardless. Right now, when I look at the human species, when I look at the psychology of the human being, of course, I'm 1 in 8 billion in a universe of countless stars, I'm just, reporting back to the species in these talks, but pretty much the mind has a relationship with its past, and it has a relationship with its future. The mind's relationship with its past, it is possessive because the memory has shape. This is a bizarre concept, but it's that sometimes you can possess memories and memories can possess you. Anytime a person gets angry, they're actually possessed not by a demon, by their past. And pretty much anything that limits, you can say, or destroys, you can say it's demonic. Anything that creates, you can say it's angelic. Or anything that preserves creation, or anything that preserves destruction is demonic. But really what it is, it's just ignorance of ability. Sometimes I have thought about why even in the religious narrative there needs to be discussions or dialogue in regards to there being other dimensions filled with entities that don't have good intent, and some dimensions where entities have good intent. It's like people don't realize the world of religious thought is not the world we're seeing now. You know what it is? Sometimes I think holy books were like transmission from parallel universes. The angels of the future is the potential of mankind. The demons of the past are the ignorance of mankind. And so it's a fight between, I would say, it's like, do we give the past what it wants? Do we give the present what it wants? And do we give the future what it wants? past are ideological systems that avoid novelty and reject the potential decency of the human being. The angels of the future are actually states of freedom. So imagine on one level, sure, there's good and bad human beings on the planet, but on another level, there's unknown minds entertaining various different states of just performance and expression, you know. When it comes to bodies, sure, 8 billion human beings on the planet, but when it comes to minds, it's as if 8 billion points of focused force. You know, when I think about what I can lose in this lifetime, I realize the most precious thing is awareness. You know? And you know what's strange? It's like a human being wondering how it's being other than human. You know? That's really the mystery of awareness. You know, we are, let's say, an evolutionary species. We're like an animal that has worn clothing, is standing straight and is speaking, you know. You know, evolutionary biologists agree. When people party and they say they call them party animals, that's actually a very accurate scientific term. You know? You know, animalistic behavior, we will get bored of violence. And when we get bored of violence, the greatness of the mind steps forth. Can you imagine all evil people on the planet being like, yo man, this is boring, for how long am I gonna just disturb, you know, nature's endless progression? You know, it's like, you know, something I remember now, it's a story, it's pretty much something attributed to this enlightened bodhisattva by the name of this liberated bodhisattva by the name of Guru Padmasambhava. And Guru Padmasambhava was such a next level being that not only had he just, you know, incarnated as an 8-year-old child on a pond, you know, and got adopted by a king, but he would go around through different villages that had droughts, and he would in some sense ward off the spirits that were causing those droughts, you know, and he would convert them to Buddhism, you know. Some people are afraid of ghosts, but what he's, you know, Guru Padmasambhava was converting ghosts to Buddhism, you know, like that level of, you know, that's truly an enlightened able being, you know. It's like, you know, it's like you can't even call it a good being when the person is like free beyond good and bad, so they just point. You know, it's like, is that a hero? Sure. The mind is very interesting. It promises you paradises and it runs away, you know, from, you know, its own hell. You know, this world is so strange that it's like, you know, a giant question without an answer. There is the death of the body, and then there is the life of the mind. And then there is the knowing of the timeless unknown. I have understood this concept of the unknown, and yet I do not understand why, it's as if knowledge doesn't transform. What are the eyes doing in a world? The greatest question that can be asked. And it's as if when somebody sees something, or their perception, let's say, leads towards some sort of sadness, it's as if that sadness is in some sense like how the past and the future have a relationship before the person moves or does anything in the present. Those who trust the future, they will pilot very smoothly, because their faith is in like the ending victory. Some people, they have faith that they are victorious from the beginning, and some have faith that they will be victorious in the end. But regardless of victory, if the greatness of the species is not unveiled, then it's as if let me tell you, there's a sadness of the body which we call pain. There's a sadness of the mind which we call suffering. And I would say the sadness of the soul is really how the void and infinity are two sides of the same coin. Beyond the human framework, it's another suggestion that it's beyond the game of an individual. It's like a character in a video game realizing the console may be reset, Or imagine like this would be a very realistic video game, where as the character, let's say somebody's playing a video game on a console, and they're reaching the end of the video game, they're reaching the final quest of the video game, and imagine before the final quest, the video game character suddenly becomes scared or sad. Do you know? I think really the sadness of the soul is not being able to see the potential of all that it was. But it's also inconceivable, the notion of the soul. So it could be a sort of, an inconceivable sadness may not exist. When I'm, let's say we wonder about what are the forces that influence the human being. Maybe I should share, okay, I'll get into, what's his name, Robert Steinberg's theory on intelligence a bit later, but I'll say this. Physical continuity, that's a force. Pretty much the body intends to continue. When it comes to the mind, I would say it is creative continuity. Or I shouldn't say creative continuity, I should say creative ability. This is a force. Now, if it goes to the soul, which is another way of saying what forces move the unknown, the unknown attention or the inner witness beyond the outer form. I would say peace, contentment of peace. This is really like if there was an eternal being listening to me right now, and an eternal being was like, what's my purpose? It's like, be at peace with what you are. But the human position is different, you know, as a temporary being, to be at peace, you know, with what you are is not enough when the species has work to do. You know, it's as if, you know, everybody, imagine a giant boat with 8 billion beings on it was sinking, and everybody on the boat was just sleeping, you know, just being peaceful, basking in the sun, and the captain of the ship was like, what the fuck? You know, it's like, you know, to be at peace after the activation of the greatest potential of the future is the proper route. You know, it's, I have this, you know, view that if somebody was like Mr.Within, why are souls in the world? I would say to perform. We are here to touch the history of humanity somehow. And an advanced civilization will make sure that every human intelligence, not only they will be seen, but it's as if, like I am telling you, there is a value to how intelligence happens that the future doesn't want to miss out on. Really, the mind of man in civilization 1.0 is an information addict. We are addicted, in some sense, to novelty. And maybe I shouldn't use that word. I should use we are attached, or we are expecting novelty, you know? Yet the force of novelty, one can say it comes from within. Pretty much I was sad, and I realized that it's because some part of me has not accepted how me was being me. You know, it's this strange thing that I would say we're such transcendental beings that the resolution to just, you know, let's say suffering of the mind is just for the attention to feel it deserves itself. You know, honestly, we're hilarious creatures. You know, our worth is based on how we hold the context of the world. How we hold the context of the world suggests how we as a concept can move in the world. Now this concept realizes it is being the context as much as it is being the concept. It's as if like let's say extraterrestrials land on Earth, and these extraterrestrials, you know, they walk up to human beings and they're like, yo, human beings, we can't tell, are you separate from the Earth or are you the Earth moving around? You know, and we'd look at the extraterrestrials and we'd be like, we don't know what to tell you, man. Do you know, I think if extraterrestrials land on Earth, the first people that should be sent by all governments to go contact the aliens should be hipsters. You know? Can you imagine, like, you know, in a hypothetical, you know, story where the president, you know, is in the White House, you know, and an alien suddenly appears, and the bodyguards and the president, everybody's freaking out, and the president just looks at the bodyguard and says, go bring a hipster here right now. Man, it's as if the mind can see so ahead of the world that it realizes it automatically becomes responsible to build it. This is I think the secret to greatness is curiosity, and the secret to curiosity is honest walking. It's as if at some point in this life, it's like the past has happened, the present is just being here and now, and the future is really what present beings with a past need to pay attention to. And the future, the most important component of it is its design. That means even though I do get emotional when I think about, the thresholds of pain and pleasure the species will go through in the future, but it's as if regardless of its emotional sense, it's as if like this, business owner suddenly realizing, regardless of how the employees feel, it's as if the target has to be done by the deadline. So in some sense has to be met. So what I'm saying is like, regardless of the emotions of how reality is happening, its design, its structure, how it is shaped, the strategy. I believe the brain it's acting like a strategist. Pretty much what it is, it's like our minds are fathoming probabilities to reality, and based on then an emotional consideration of which probability is more instantaneously agreeable or likable, it's like then the actions come, right? And there's a huge responsibility with holding layers of information, because I am telling you, when you look at life as a designer, emotions are like that rare phoenix you see in the sky, like and from one angle we can say, who cares about the future? Nature's going to do its thing. Nature's going to happen in accordance to just the laws of the whole universal sector. But then we can't avoid or ignore how the human free will is a force of its own. That means the advantage is like, that's the divine clue. Free will is the divine clue. Imagine you went to university and there was a course called Studying Free Will, and students had left reviews on that, let's say, class, and they're like, it's like, after going through this class, I don't know if I exist anymore. Oh man, life is for a materialist, it's art. For an immaterialist, it is divine. It is divinity. And the difference between divinity and art is that art is spontaneous, novel. Divinity is intended. It's as if other dimensions intended other dimensions, and those dimensions came about. Or greater dimensions intended lesser dimensions. Or it could be that right now, like every human being's being like, metaphorically like a blood cell of a cosmic organism, like and maybe something that deep down I've always known is that no image can replace a moving world. I think the conclusion of a conscious life form is that the life moves the form, and the inspiration, the willingness, that is intelligence. And so it's as if the will of an object to express itself as a subject, and then the subject realizing the object it will go away one day, so then it's left with itself as a subject. And then when it realizes the subject can go away too, then there comes a sort of poetic graduation of the souls of this plane to a realm where I would say they are not, how would I say it? It's as if the era of solar rebellion ends. There is no longer, how would I say it? It's as if in greater dimensions, you're not inside a story, you're a storyteller. And the free will is sort of the bridge between that. So really, it's as if the being had an ability to live in a story, you know? Then the being had an ability to tell a story while it was living in a story, and then the being realized it is the storyteller, but then the being realized the intent of the story is known intelligence prior. That means it's as if there is always a smarter explanation to everything till the end of time. You know, it's as if it's all just taste and choice, you know. They say, you know, to people, don't be emotional, you know, in life. It's like people who are emotional make bad decisions, but as a philosopher, it's like the end of life after mastering the dimensions of the intellect is just left to an emotional life. That means, imagine we solved all the biological problems in regards to health. Imagine we solved all the problems in regards to the psychology of the human being living on the planet, and eventually it would just be a sort of, the species would start scanning for new emotions it has never had, you know, beyond chaotic and ordered you know, relationships. And I have a prediction that all violence and chaos in the future will happen in cyberspace. That means no longer physical violence is necessary when in cyberspace people can customize who they are and battle it out. When I think about, here I'll go to this concept of desires. Are desires deserved? Let's say a person has a desire to give 10,000 talks. And let's say this person asks himself, do I deserve to give 10,000 talks? Or is that the task of an immortal being? Is that like too much for the temporary, or is it the task of the immortal? And imagine, you know, I'm not considering a sort of Dalai Lama like lineage where the person's like, all right, next lifetime I'll come and finish it. For me, it's a sort of now or never, because time is also listening to these talks. In the Mahabharata, this book written by Rishi Vyasa, he does a genius literary move, and the narrator of the story of the Mahabharata is time. For the human being, we can personify time. You can even, like if I Google right now, Greek god of time, 100% there's like something there. Here, Greek god of time. Okay, Chronos, yeah, that should have been obvious. And some people will be like, Mr.Within, the god of time, how does the god of time look like? And I'm going to show you. This dude's the god of time, you know. This is Chronos. We attribute chronological, you know, it's like a poet, you know, gave a face to a universal theme, and some artists drew it, you know. One statement that should be said is art is never alone. Its inspirations live through it. I ask myself, do I deserve to give 10,000 talks? And based on how I lived, I could feel, no, maybe I don't deserve to give 10,000 talks. And then I also think, okay, maybe I do. It's like they have equal, let's say, positioning. And then I think about, I start from a different sort of, I guess, argumentation, and I say, okay, forget me. Let's say does the species deserve to advance? And I'm like, yes, okay. And then I think about, okay, if the species advances, then there would be an advanced civilization. So would the species deserve an advanced civilization? Yes. And then I think about, in an advanced civilization, would a human being be able to give 10,000 talks? And in some sense, the idea is like, yeah. Do you see? It's as if, how would I tell you? The angels of the future just come and fight the demons of the past, Our prejudices are destroyed by how the future reveals itself. People in religious institutions, they worship revelation, but guess what? Every day you wake up is a revelation. The moment is revelatory. Consciousness is built like that. It's designed to start in a world, accept the boundaries of that world, go beyond the boundaries of that world, expand the world, eventually realize that it can infinitely expand its boundaries. When it infinitely expands its boundaries, it stops identifying, it shifts the original position. So it's as if a person experiences themselves, like their self being the whole moment of conscious being, and the moment they're the whole moment of conscious being, it's as if how could they have just been the body? How could they have just been their thoughts coming and going? It's as if everything is changing except this viewer that when it wakes up and it sleeps, it's timelessly being to itself. This is why we wear watches, because the way the intelligence works, it doesn't naturally, it's like life. Let me tell you, emotions are another way where intelligence is measuring the world in comparison to itself, right? You can say that, you can look at something, you can, let's say a person, has fun for 10 minutes. Let's say a person has fun for an hour, right? And then you wonder about, okay, an hour. Okay, we have 60 minutes of fun. But you can also see, you look at that moment and you're like, you see it in regards to measurement, you see it just being 60 minutes. And then the other side of what the value the moment has is what emotion you had during that hour. Let's say if you were waiting for something, that hour felt like days. Let's say if you were, vice versa. Really, I don't know. I think on some level we all deserve, our potential, but on another level, the world seems to deserve unknown movement. I don't know. I have this feeling that right now in 2022, all human beings are alive, or so blessed. Let me tell you why. Because we got to experience life as one mind and one body. The future will be different, And the question will come, do time travelers have egos? And the answer is, without them, there would be no time. Imagine there was complete emptiness. And then one parallel universe happened. The first parallel universe, let's say the oldest parallel universe. Then following that parallel universe, another parallel universe was born. The second parallel universe. And imagine it got to, let's say 227th parallel universe. And imagine like our Earth was that parallel universe. it would be as if like our universe has 226 older, sibling parallel universes. And imagine the first universe, parallel universe 1. That universe is in some sense cutting through or marching through the edges of the unknown. It could be that if a person entertains parallel lifehood, that there is a greater parallel self to themselves that is present in ways that they cannot fathom, but they can honor by just remembering through how they're being before the human identity is a shape. Philosophy is actually one of the most important and most advanced things. That means it's only a human being that is content to wonder about the beyond can become a philosopher. The past can give you any promise, but the present chooses. And the present can promise anything in the future, but unless it's done, unless somehow human beings wake up and they care for the advance. It would be so embarrassing if the past messed up to such a degree and the present didn't do anything about it to such a degree that the future generations were like, why were you guys even here then? The victory of a species in the void. Is to be content with how peace, the ultimate peace, was in the room before creaturehood turned us into pieces, of a temporary game. There has been times where I have, physically I have been born, of course, 91 represent, But if I think about my mind, like my personality, name, and all my memories and content, sure, those were relevant to the physical birth. But when I think about my awareness was not born. It's as if it's like bodies are born, minds are just remembered. Consciousness is like, a memory of the timeless. And when angels of the future come to fight demons of the past, that's pretty much the backup system. The present should stand in a greatness that is boundless. And that is what I feel the ultimate desire of the human being. To be the greatness of its sight as the original state. It's like beyond this realm, there's no more games. That is true Mahasamadhi. When life, as if a multidimensional being, just like a warrior after a battle puts down the shield and the sword and just sits down and closes its eyes just to contemplate and just take in what has just happened. Similarly, it's like a multidimensional being slowly putting down its parallel universes and then remembering or remembering. It's like being. That's it. I think inner beauty is the acceptance of being. And you can only accept it if the world is free before anything in it can deny that freedom. That means start the context of the meaning of the world as if the ultimate freedom is being. And I guess this concludes this episode. What else can I say?